So Christopher Nolan's officially returning with what may be his most ambitious movie ever, The Odyssey. So after the massive success of Oppenheimer, Nolan could have made almost anything he wanted, and instead of doing like another modern thriller or like sci-fi movie, he decided to adapt one of the oldest, most influential stories ever written, Homer's Odyssey. So before you watch The Odyssey, here's everything you need to know about the story, cast, characters, and what Christopher Nolan has actually said about this movie. And for anyone unfamiliar with the original story, The Odyssey follows Odysseus, the legendary Greek king of Ithaca, after the end of the Trojan War. And while the war itself is over, Odysseus' real journey is only beginning. On his voyage home, he becomes trapped in a brutal 10-year journey across dangerous seas filled with monsters, gods, temptations, wars, and psychological torment. And meanwhile, back home in Ithaca, his wife Penelope and son Telemachus are forced to survive while believing Odysseus may never return. So at its core, The Odyssey is really about survival, temptation, and the cost of war. And based on everything revealed so far, it sounds like Nolan's leaning heavily into that side of the story and more of the woman's perspectives from the movie based on what Lupita Nyong'o is saying. So I don't know how I feel about that. That's an interesting choice. But Nolan reportedly became fascinated with the scale and emotional depth of Homer's story after Oppenheimer. And based on early reviews of the film, people are saying that it's a massive epic with a heavy use of practical effects rather than CGI. And that's important because Nolan is famous for avoiding excessive green screen whenever possible. He prefers practical sets, real locations, real explosions. So instead of feeling like a glossy fantasy movie, The Odyssey may feel like a more grounded, raw, and immersive film, which I also don't know how I feel because The Odyssey is a mythological movie where we're talking about monsters and gods. I don't know how I feel about trying to ground that. I like the idea of celebrating the lunacy of it, really leaning into the gods and monsters aspect, but we shall see when the movie drops. So let's now talk about the cast because this movie has one of the strangest casts ever. There's a ton of big name and great actors, and then there's a few head scratchers. So leading the film is Matt Damon as Odysseus. Matt Damon has already worked with Nolan on both Interstellar and Oppenheimer, but Odysseus may be his biggest Nolan role yet. His character Odysseus is constantly forced to outthink impossible situations rather than simply overpower enemies physically. And playing Penelope is Anne Hathaway, and Penelope is Odysseus' wife and one of the emotional cores of the story. And while Odysseus is trapped on his journey home, Penelope remains in Ithaca surrounded by men trying to force her into a remarriage because they assume Odysseus is dead. Then there's Tom Holland, who is playing Telemachus. Telemachus is Odysseus' son, and his role in the story is actually very important because while Odysseus is away, Telemachus struggles with growing up without his father and eventually begins his own journey searching for answers about what happened to him. And then Zendaya is also part of the cast, and she's playing Athena, the goddess who frequently guides and protects Odysseus throughout his journey. And Athena is actually one of the most important figures in the Odyssey because she constantly influences events from behind the scenes and helps Odysseus survive impossible odds, while also helping Telemachus mature into adulthood. And then King Menelaus of Sparta is being played by Jon Bernthal. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he's also set to return as Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, in Spider-Man Brand New Day, which literally comes out 14 days after this movie drops. And Menelaus is one of the key Greek leaders from the Trojan War and the husband of Helen of Troy, whose abduction by Paris helped spark the entire conflict in the first place. And while Menelaus isn't the central focus of the story, he plays an important role in helping Telemachus learn more about his father's fate, and we ultimately saw a snippet of this in one of the early trailers for the movie. And another major cast member is Robert Pattinson, who has been very busy this year, but he's playing Antinous, the leader of the Suitors occupying Odysseus' palace back in Ithaca. Antinous is essentially one of the story's primary human villains. While Odysseus is struggling to survive monsters and gods across the sea, Antinous is the leader of the men who are attempting to steal Odysseus' kingdom and force Penelope into marriage. And Pattinson has shown that he can play charismatic but dangerous characters before, so this casting makes a ton of sense. And then Lupita Nyong'o is also attached and stirred plenty of controversy when it was revealed that she would be portraying both Helen of Troy and her twin sister, Clytemnestra. And in Greek mythology, Helen is often described as the most beautiful woman in the world, and the woman whose kidnapping ignited the Trojan War. And in mentioning some of the supporting cast, Travis Scott is reportedly playing a bard. In ancient Greece, bards were storytellers, musicians, and historians who passed down legends through song and spoken word. And this makes absolutely no sense to me. Christopher Nolan tried saying modern day rap is basically poetry. So that's why he casted Travis Scott as a bard, which is a really weird casting because Travis Scott has zero acting experience. He's not even the best of rappers. And it's reported that he recorded the song in the end credit scene of this movie, which is also even more head scratching because Christopher Nolan said there's no like orchestra in the soundtrack because there was no orchestras back then, which honestly just sounds baffling to me. Like, just get a really good composer and get an orchestra and make a kick-ass, soundtrack. This whole, oh, they didn't exist back then, but then we're gonna have Travis Scott likely make somewhat of a trap song in the end credits makes absolutely no sense to me. So that part I don't like going into this movie. But then there's also Benny Safdie, who's playing Agamemnon, the commander of the Greek forces during the Trojan War and the brother of Menelaus. And Agamemnon is one of the most important figures in Greek mythology because many of the tragedies that followed the war can be traced back to his decisions. And no one previously worked with Safdie and Oppenheimer, so it's no surprise to see him return here in another major historical role. Now let's talk about something else that makes this movie historic before it's even released. The Odyssey is the first major film ever shot entirely using IMAX film cameras. Christopher Nolan has been pushing IMAX technology for years, using it for portions of The Dark Knight, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, and Oppenheimer. But for The Odyssey, he went all in. And Nolan worked with IMAX to develop new camera technology specifically for this production, allowing the entire film to be captured in the format. And according to IMAX, the movie was shot entirely with IMAX film cameras using brand new technology developed for this project specifically. So if you're someone that already watches movies in IMAX, then this is probably the way to go for it. But if you're someone like me where, I don't really see movies in IMAX just because I'm a cheapskate, I like to save my money, then the film's going to look great no matter what. It really just depends on how much you're willing to shed for a movie ticket. But no matter what, I feel like this movie's going to look incredible. So to recap everything, The Odyssey follows Odysseus on a 10-year struggle to return home after the Trojan War. Matt Damon leads in an absolutely stacked cast that includes Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Lupita Nyong'o, John Bernthal, and then Travis Scott for some reason. And then also Elliot Page is in this movie. And if you don't know who that is, then you may remember Ellen Page, but then something happened, and now we've got Elliot Page, who is playing Sinon, a character that's not in the Odyssey or even the Iliad, I believe. And Sinon is a warrior, so make that how you will. I don't know about that casting either. But even with some of the controversial castings and some of the things that Christopher Nolan has said, like the orchestra thing, and then adapting the Emily Wilson version of the Odyssey, which is specifically translated in like a feminist way, so take that how you will as well. But overall, the Odyssey is shaping up to be one of the biggest movies of 2026. And if Nolan pulls this off, we may be looking at another all-time classic. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and I have a ton of Spider-Man Brand New Day content as well. And tomorrow I will be posting my official review of the Odyssey, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And then for the rest of the month, it's just Spider-Man Brand New Day videos. I'm talking July 18th to July 31st. We got a Spider-Man Brand New Day video coming out every single day, so definitely make sure to subscribe to see those videos, and I'd really appreciate it. And God bless you all.